There comes a point in everyone's life when they realize that the world around them won't change just because they wish it to. You can't force people to act differently. You can't demand life to be easier. You can't control outcomes. But what you can control, what you must control, are the few things that shape everything else. If you want to change your direction, your peace, your success, or your entire life, then it all starts with mastering control over these four things. The first is your mind. The mind is where everything begins and ends. Every thought you entertain becomes the foundation for your decisions, actions, and habits. When your mind is cluttered with doubt, comparison, and fear, it becomes impossible to make progress. But when you train your mind to focus on growth, gratitude, and clarity, you transform the way you see challenges. You begin to notice opportunities where others only see problems. Controlling your mind doesn't mean avoiding negativity. It means refusing to let it define your behavior. The discipline to think clearly, to step back before reacting, and to direct your focus on what truly matters is one of the most powerful forms of control you can develop. The second thing you must control is your emotions. Emotions are energy. They can either fuel you or destroy you. Most people let emotions dictate their responses. They get angry, they quit, they react impulsively, and later regret it. But those who learn emotional control gain something priceless: stability. When you can stay calm in chaos, you make better decisions. When you can manage disappointment, you stay consistent. Emotional control isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about understanding them, channeling them, and using them to drive forward instead of holding you back. The strongest people are not those who never feel pain. They're the ones who refuse to let pain control them. The third is your time. Time is the only currency you can't earn back, yet it's the one people spend most carelessly. Every moment you give to distraction, negativity, or meaningless activity is a moment stolen from your potential. Controlling your time means knowing what deserves your attention. It means saying no to what doesn't align with your goals. It means focusing on progress, not perfection. Most people say they don't have time, but in reality, they just don't control it. The truth is, you always have time for what truly matters. You just have to decide what that is. And finally, the fourth thing you must control is your environment. You can't grow in a place that constantly pulls you backward. The people you surround yourself with, the spaces you occupy, the habits you reinforce, all of these shape your mindset and motivation. If you're around negativity long enough, it becomes your normal. But if you surround yourself with growth, inspiration, and discipline, that too becomes your normal. Controlling your environment means choosing to be in places and around people that reflect the future you want, not the past you've outgrown. The truth is, when you take control of your mind, emotions, time, and environment, you no longer need to wait for life to change. You become the one who changes it. Most people try to control the external world, but the real transformation begins when you take responsibility for the internal one. When you master these four things, everything else, your relationships, your career, your confidence, your happiness, begins to align naturally. Control is not about domination. It's about direction. It's about steering your life instead of drifting through it. Because the moment you stop trying to control what's outside of you and start mastering what's within you, that's the moment everything begins to change. Fifth keynotes of the speech: control your mind. Your thoughts shape your direction. Control your emotions. Stability leads to strength. Control your time. Focus only on what matters most. Control your environment. Surround yourself with growth, not limitation. True change begins within, not in the world around you. Controlling your mind is the foundation of every change you want to create in your life. Everything you experience, every emotion you feel, and every action you take begins in your mind. It's not the events around you that shape your reality, it's how your mind interprets them. Two people can face the same challenge and have completely different outcomes, not because the challenge was different, but because their minds processed it differently. One sees defeat, the other sees opportunity. One stops, the other grows. The only difference lies in the level of control they have over their thoughts. The human mind is powerful beyond measure, but that power can either work for you or against you. If you don't control your mind, it will control you. And when that happens, you'll find yourself reacting to everything. People, situations, emotions, without ever realizing you've surrendered your power. Most people live their lives on mental autopilot. They wake up thinking the same thoughts, repeating the same doubts, feeding the same fears, and wondering why nothing changes. But the truth is, your thoughts are the architects of your reality. If your inner dialogue is full of negativity, your outer world will reflect it. That's why mental control isn't just about thinking positively, it's about thinking deliberately. The first step in controlling your mind is awareness. You can't change what you don't recognize. Most people never pause long enough to observe the noise in their heads. They carry stories about who they are, stories of limitation, failure, and insecurity that were never true to begin with. The mind tends to replay old narratives because it finds comfort in familiarity, even when that familiarity causes pain. But the moment you start observing your thoughts, you begin to separate yourself from them. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. And that awareness gives you power. Once you become aware, the next step is direction. Your mind needs a destination. If you don't tell it where to go, it will wander into worry, distraction, and doubt. You must decide what you want your thoughts to focus on. Every goal, every vision, every dream you have must first exist in your mind before it can exist in your life. That's why people who visualize success, who remind themselves daily of their purpose, tend to move toward it faster. They've trained their minds to look for what they want instead of what they fear. Your mind is like a compass. It points in the direction of your dominant thoughts. If you think about what could go wrong, that's where you'll go. If you think about what can go right, your actions begin to align with that belief. But mental control isn't easy. The mind resists change because it's wired to protect you. It prefers comfort, predictability, and safety even when those things hold you back. When you decide to think differently, to believe in possibilities instead of limitations, your mind will fight you. It will remind you of your past mistakes, amplify your fears, and whisper reasons why you can't. But that's exactly when control matters most. You must learn to challenge those thoughts, not obey them. Every time you replace a limiting belief with an empowering one, you rewire your brain. Every time you focus on gratitude instead of complaint, resilience instead of fear, you strengthen your mental discipline. Another essential part of controlling your mind is managing what you feed it. Just like your body becomes what you eat, your mind becomes what you consume. The information you take in through conversations, media, or environment shapes your thinking patterns. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, comparison, or gossip, your mind absorbs it. But if you surround yourself with learning, inspiration, and purpose, your mind expands. You can't expect a peaceful mind if you're feeding it chaos. Control begins with boundaries, deciding what enters your mental space and what doesn't. Consistency is the secret ingredient in mastering your mind. It's not about controlling it once, it's about training it daily. Every morning you wake up with a choice to let your thoughts run you or to take charge of them. Some days it will feel like a battle. Your old patterns will try to pull you back into comfort. But the more you practice awareness, direction, and discipline, the stronger your mental muscles become. Over time, control becomes second nature. When your mind is under your control, life changes in profound ways. You stop reacting emotionally to every challenge. You begin to approach problems with clarity instead of panic. You become more focused, more patient, and more intentional. The chaos around you no longer dictates your peace because you've learned to manage the chaos within. The world doesn't get easier, but you become stronger. That's the real power of controlling your mind, not to escape problems, but to face them with a calm and centered perspective. Control your mind and you control your path. Everything else, your actions, your relationships, your achievements flows from that single source. Because once your thoughts align with your purpose, no obstacle can stand in your way for long. The change you seek in your life starts not outside of you, but in the silent conversation happening inside your mind every day. The moment you learn to guide that conversation with awareness and intention, everything else begins to change. Controlling your emotions is one of the hardest yet most life-changing disciplines you can ever develop. Emotions are powerful forces. They drive decisions, shape relationships, and determine how you respond to life's challenges. When you lose control of them, they control you, and that's when chaos begins. Many people believe that being emotional means being weak, but that's not true. Emotions are natural, they're human, and they're necessary. What defines strength is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by what you feel. When you learn to manage your emotions, you gain the power to navigate life with clarity and grace, even when everything around you seems uncertain. Every emotion you experience carries energy. Anger, fear, love, joy, disappointment, all of them have power. The problem arises when you let that power take charge of your behavior. Think about how many decisions people make in moments of frustration, jealousy, or sadness that they later regret. A single moment of uncontrolled emotion can destroy relationships, careers, and opportunities. But a single moment of emotional awareness can prevent that damage. The ability to pause before reacting, to breathe before responding, is the difference between chaos and composure. That small moment of control can change everything. Emotional control begins with understanding where your emotions come from. They don't appear out of nowhere. They're signals, messages from your inner world trying to tell you something. Anger might mean your boundaries were crossed. Sadness might mean you lost something valuable. Fear might mean you're stepping outside your comfort zone. When you see emotions as teachers instead of enemies, you stop fighting them and start learning from them. You can't control what you don't understand. But once you start listening to your emotions, you can decide how to respond instead of reacting impulsively. Many people confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. They think controlling emotions means pretending they don't exist. But suppressing emotions only makes them stronger. You can bury anger, but it will resurface in your words. You can hide sadness, but it will leak through your actions. True control means acknowledging what you feel, but refusing to let it dictate your behavior. You can be angry without being destructive. You can be afraid without running away. You can be hurt without hurting others. That's what emotional intelligence really means. Feeling everything but mastering your response. In every situation, you have two choices: react or respond. Reaction is automatic, emotional, and often regretful. Response is intentional, measured, and wise. When you react, emotions are in control. When you respond, you are. The space between what happened to you and what you do next determines the quality of your life. The more you expand that space, the more power you gain. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the creator of your outcome. Another key to emotional control is detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. You stop attaching your peace to other people's behavior, to outcomes you can't control, or to expectations that constantly disappoint you. The more you depend on external things to feel okay, the more vulnerable you are to emotional chaos. But when your sense of calm comes from within, you become unshakable. You can face rejection without losing confidence, failure without losing hope, and criticism without losing focus. That's real emotional strength, the ability to remain centered no matter what's happening around you. It's also important to understand that emotions are contagious. The people you spend time with influence how you feel. When you're around constant negativity, anger, or anxiety, you absorb that energy. That's why controlling your emotions also means being mindful of your environment. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary. Because your emotional state affects how you think, how you act, and how you treat others. When you maintain control, you become a source of stability for yourself and for those around you. Mastering your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness, practice, and patience. You will still have moments where emotions overwhelm you. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you choose understanding over anger, every time you stay calm when it would be easier to explode, you strengthen your emotional muscles. Over time, those small victories compound, and you become someone who can face life's storms without losing your balance. When you can control your emotions, you gain control over your choices. And when you control your choices, you control your destiny. You start making decisions based on logic and purpose, not fear or impulse. You stop being easily manipulated by circumstances or people's opinions. You learn to lead with calmness and act with intention. The peace you create inside you becomes your greatest protection in a chaotic world. Emotional control turns obstacles into lessons, pain into perspective, and challenges into growth. It allows you to stay focused when others lose direction and grounded when others panic. That's what separates those who merely survive from those who thrive. The world will always test your emotions. People will provoke you. Situations will frustrate you, and life will not always be fair. But how you respond in those moments defines your strength. You can't always choose what happens, but you can always choose how you feel about it and what you do next. And that choice made over and over again is what gives you power, the power to change everything. Controlling your time is one of the greatest acts of self-respect and discipline you can ever develop. Time is the one resource every human being has in equal measure, yet it's the one most people waste without realizing it. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose opportunities and create new ones. But once a moment is gone, it's gone forever. The difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck often comes down to how they manage and protect their time. People who achieve meaningful success don't have more hours in a day. They simply have more control over how they use them. Every minute you spend is a silent decision about your priorities. Most people say they don't have time, but in truth, they just haven't learned to control it. They let their time be stolen by distractions, wasted by indecision, and consumed by things that add no value to their lives. The reality is that time control starts with clarity. When you don't know what truly matters to you, everything feels urgent and nothing gets done. You say yes to everything because you haven't decided what deserves your yes. But when you're clear about your purpose, your priorities fall into place and your decisions become easier. You start realizing that not everything requires your attention and not everyone deserves your energy. The modern world makes controlling your time harder than ever. Notifications, social media, endless entertainment, they all compete for your focus. The human brain wasn't built to handle constant stimulation. Every time you switch your attention, you lose focus, momentum, and depth. You may feel busy, but business is not the same as productivity. Many people mistake motion for progress. They spend hours responding, scrolling, reacting, but at the end of the day, they've achieved nothing meaningful. To truly control your time, you must learn to separate activity from achievement. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. Time control also requires the courage to say no. Saying no is difficult because it often feels uncomfortable. You worry about disappointing people or missing out. But every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're saying no to something essential. People who value their time understand that every yes carries a cost. They protect their hours like precious currency because they know time spent cannot be refunded. When you begin to see time as your most valuable asset, you stop giving it away so freely. You start setting boundaries, not because you're selfish, but because you're focused. Discipline plays a huge role in mastering time. It's easy to plan, it's harder to follow through. The key is to build systems that support your goals. Having control over your time doesn't mean filling every hour with tasks. It means being intentional. It means having moments of work, rest, reflection, and growth, all balanced according to your priorities. The people who seem calm and organized are not less busy than others. They've simply learned to manage chaos through structure. They know when to engage and when to step back. They understand that time spent thinking, planning, or resting is not wasted. It's strategic. Procrastination is another silent thief of time. It disguises itself as comfort, but it steals your potential one day at a time. Every time you delay something important, you're not saving time, you're borrowing from your future. Control means facing discomfort now so you can experience freedom later. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act, but motivation is unreliable. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you discipline yourself to act even when you don't feel like it, you begin to take charge of your time and your life. One powerful way to control your time is through awareness, being conscious of where it's going. Ask yourself regularly, is what I'm doing right now moving me closer to where I want to be? That simple question can redirect your entire day. Time awareness reveals how often we get lost in trivial things. It reminds us that every scroll, every distraction, every unnecessary argument takes away from something that truly matters: our growth, our goals, our peace. Another aspect of controlling your time is learning to be fully present. Too often, people waste the present moment by living in the past or worrying about the future. They spend time physically in one place but mentally somewhere else. Real control means giving your full attention to what's in front of you. When you work, work with focus. When you rest, rest without guilt. When you connect with someone, be there fully. Presence multiplies the value of your time because it deepens your experience of it. Ultimately, controlling your time is about realizing that life is short, and what you do with your hours determines the quality of your years. You can drift through your days reacting to everything that comes your way, or you can design your life around intention. You can allow time to slip through your fingers, or you can hold it, direct it, and use it to build something meaningful. Every hour spent with purpose brings you closer to the person you want to become. When you understand that time stops being something you chase, it becomes something you master. Controlling your environment is one of the most underrated yet transformative choices you can make. People often underestimate how much their surroundings influence their mindset, their habits, and ultimately their future. You can have the strongest goals, the best intentions, and the highest motivation, but if your environment doesn't support your growth, it will slowly drain your energy and focus. The truth is, you cannot consistently rise above the influence of the space and people you surround yourself with. Your environment is either pushing you forward or pulling you backward. There's no neutral ground. Every detail of your environment communicates something to your subconscious mind. The people you spend time with, the conversations you engage in, the energy of the places you visit, all of these shape how you think and feel. If you're surrounded by negativity, gossip, and complacency, it becomes harder to stay optimistic and ambitious. But if you are around people who challenge you, inspire you, and hold you accountable, your standards begin to rise naturally. Human beings are wired to adapt to their surroundings. If your environment normalizes growth, you grow. If it normalizes excuses, you shrink. That's why the company you keep matters as much as the goals you set. Control over your environment begins with awareness. Many people stay stuck because they don't realize how deeply they've been conditioned by the world around them. You absorb habits without noticing. You mirror attitudes unconsciously. You start thinking and acting like the people you spend most of your time with. If those people lack discipline, you start to lower your own. If they settle for average, you begin to do the same. But when you step into a space where excellence is the norm, you can't help but rise to meet it. You start demanding more from yourself simply because everyone around you does. That's the quiet power of your environment. It shapes your identity even when you're not paying attention. Physical spaces matter just as much as people. The state of your surroundings affects your energy and mental clarity. A cluttered, noisy, chaotic environment makes it difficult to think clearly. Your mind reflects what it sees. When your space is disorganized, your thoughts often follow. But when you create a space that feels calm, purposeful, and inspiring, your mind begins to align with that energy. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. Small details like keeping your workspace clean, your room peaceful, or your digital life organized send powerful signals to your brain that you're in control. It tells your mind that your environment supports your goals rather than sabotaging them. Another aspect of controlling your environment is setting emotional boundaries. It's not just about where you are physically, it's about what kind of energy you allow in. Some environments look fine on the outside but are emotionally toxic. It could be a friend group that constantly complains, a workplace filled with gossip, or even a family dynamic that discourages ambition. When you absorb that negativity daily, it slowly wears down your motivation. You start believing that dreaming big is unrealistic or that growth is unnecessary. But when you take control, when you choose to distance yourself from what drains you, you make space for what empowers you. Protecting your peace is not avoidance, it's survival. Technology has also become a part of our environment, and it influences us more than we realize. The content you consume shapes your thoughts, just like the people around you do. If your feed is full of distraction, comparison, and noise, your mind becomes restless. But if you curate your digital space, following people who educate, inspire, and challenge you, you turn technology into a tool for growth instead of destruction. Controlling your environment in the digital world is just as important as in the physical one. You have to decide what gets access to your attention, because attention is the new currency of life. It's also important to remember that your environment includes your habits, the invisible routines that shape your daily atmosphere. The things you do repeatedly become the background of your life. If your habits encourage laziness, distraction, or delay, they create a mental environment that keeps you stuck. But if your habits are built around learning, discipline, and purpose, they cultivate an environment of progress. You don't always have to make huge changes to transform your surroundings. Small, consistent adjustments can shift your entire mindset over time. Changing your environment often starts with changing what you tolerate. Sometimes controlling your environment means walking away from what no longer aligns with who you're becoming. Growth often demands separation. It requires you to leave behind comfort zones and familiar circles that keep you stagnant. It's not about judging others, it's about protecting your potential. You can't expect to evolve while staying in an environment designed for your old self. The more you surround yourself with energy that matches your vision, the faster you grow into that vision. Taking control of your environment is really about designing a space that reminds you daily of who you want to be. It's about creating conditions where growth feels natural, not forced. It's choosing to fill your life with influences that elevate your thinking and encourage your best self to show up. Because in the end, your environment is not just where you live, it's what you live in. It's the invisible force shaping your habits, thoughts, and beliefs every single day. When you take responsibility for it, you take responsibility for your future. True change begins within, not in the world around you. Most people spend their lives trying to fix everything outside themselves. Their circumstances, their relationships, their careers, without realizing that the real source of change lies in who they're becoming on the inside. You cannot build a better life without first becoming a better version of yourself. The world you experience is a reflection of your inner state. When your thoughts are chaotic, your world feels chaotic. When your heart is at peace, the world around you feels lighter. Real transformation doesn't start when the situation changes. It starts when your perspective does. People often look for external solutions to internal problems. They think changing jobs will fix their dissatisfaction, that finding new relationships will heal their loneliness, or that success will erase their insecurities. But no matter where you go, you take yourself with you. If you don't deal with what's happening inside, you will recreate the same patterns wherever you end up. Changing your life requires changing your mindset, your habits, and your emotional patterns. You have to face the fears, beliefs, and doubts that have quietly shaped your behavior for years. That's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because without inner change, outer change never lasts. The greatest transformations often begin in silence, moments when you finally stop blaming the world and start taking responsibility for your choices. It's easy to point fingers at circumstances or people, but as long as you do, you give away your power. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means you recognize that your response is always your choice. You can't control every situation, but you can control how you think, feel, and act within it. That shift from victimhood to ownership is the moment your life begins to change. Responsibility is the foundation of growth because it reminds you that power doesn't come from control, it comes from choice. To change from within, you must first understand yourself. Self-awareness is the mirror that reveals the truth. You can't transform what you refuse to acknowledge. Most people avoid looking inward because it forces them to face uncomfortable truths, their fears, their insecurities, their contradictions. But the courage to be honest with yourself is the starting point of any lasting transformation. When you understand why you do what you do, when you recognize your triggers, patterns, and limitations, you gain the ability to rewrite them. Awareness opens the door to change because it brings clarity to what has been controlling you unconsciously. Once you begin the process of inner change, patience becomes essential. Growth doesn't happen overnight. You can't rush the evolution of your mindset or emotions. It takes consistent effort to unlearn old habits and build new ones. There will be days when you feel like nothing is changing, but even those moments matter. Change is often invisible at first. It begins quietly in the way you think, in the choices you make, in the way you handle situations differently than before. Real growth is subtle. It's in your calmness during chaos, your restraint when tempted to react, and your persistence when things get hard. Those small inner victories compound over time into transformation. Another part of inner change is healing. Many people carry emotional wounds from the past that continue to influence their behavior today. Anger, resentment, and guilt can become barriers to growth if left unresolved. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from the emotional weight of what happened. It's choosing not to let your past define your future. Forgiveness, both for yourself and others, is one of the most powerful acts of inner strength. It's not about excusing the pain, it's about releasing it so you can move forward. When you heal within, you create space for peace, purpose, and progress to take root. Inner change also demands consistency in how you speak to yourself. The voice in your head becomes the story you live by. If that voice is filled with doubt and criticism, it becomes difficult to move forward. But if it's filled with encouragement and belief, it fuels your growth. You have to learn to speak to yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Self-compassion is not weakness. It's how you build resilience. You grow faster when you replace self-judgment with self-understanding because you can't hate yourself into becoming better. Change happens when you nurture yourself with discipline and kindness at the same time. You also have to align your inner values with your outer actions. Many people say they want change, but their daily choices contradict their desires. They want peace but feed their mind chaos. They want success, but surround themselves with distraction. They want love, but hold on to bitterness. Real transformation requires alignment, living in a way that reflects what you claim to believe. When your thoughts, words, and actions move in the same direction, you stop living in conflict with yourself. That alignment creates a sense of integrity and purpose that strengthens everything you do. When you begin to master the world within, the world outside starts to respond differently. Opportunities appear not because they suddenly exist, but because your awareness expands enough to see them. Relationships improve not because others change, but because your energy and behavior invite better connections. Success feels more meaningful because it's no longer about proving something, it's about expressing who you've become. The external world mirrors the internal one. And when you grow within, everything else begins to rise with you. The truth is, you don't need to wait for perfect conditions to begin changing your life. You just need to begin with yourself. The smallest shift in how you think or respond can create a ripple that transforms everything. The real revolution doesn't happen in your circumstances. It happens in your mindset, your beliefs, and your daily discipline. Once you take control of the person you are on the inside, the world around you starts to reshape naturally. Because when you change within, you don't just change your life. You change how you live it. Change doesn't begin with luck, timing, or opportunity. It begins with control. The moment you take responsibility for what happens inside you, everything outside begins to shift. Controlling your mind gives you clarity. Controlling your emotions gives you strength. Controlling your time gives you direction. And controlling your environment gives you momentum. And when all of these align, the change within you becomes unstoppable. You stop waiting for the world to change and start becoming the reason it does. Life will never hand you perfect conditions or constant certainty, but it will always respond to the level of control and awareness you bring to it. Master what's within your reach, and the rest will follow. Because the greatest power you'll ever have is not the power to change others. It's the power to change yourself. And through that, to change everything.